everybody, Nicole Schuman, managing editor at PRNEWS here with another 5 Questions With. And today we are with Michelle Ciciyasvili, Senior Director of Communications at Betches Media. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So first off, for everyone that isn't familiar with Betches, can you explain the focus on the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So Betches is a multi-platform entertainment destination, really transcending digital media. And our core audience is our millennial and Gen Z women. We offer a full suite of premium content across video, editorial, podcast, social, and we also do immersive IRL events. And we call them, events worth leaving the house for. And our foundation is built on the creators. So we have a team of in-house, really brilliant creators that do everything from our memes, our videos, our sketches, our podcasts, video, everything is all done in-house.
So many people are using creators now, and I think especially for a brand like yours, that just makes sense.
Yeah, and really we have had that as part of the backbone of this business for many years before the creator economy was even a buzzword and part of the lexicon. And it's this year is Betches' 15th anniversary, and the co-founders started it as an anonymous blog on WordPress, and it really kind of grew into this major empire.
I remember. I feel like I've pretty much grown up with it, and I think a lot of other young women and maybe men too feel the same. So
yeah, no, definitely, I feel the same way.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know you have a background in entertainment. So how did that translate to bringing you to a media site like Betches?
Yeah, I have always dreamed of being in entertainment. I had my first internship at Disney Theatrical Group in college, and it was PR. So I always knew I wanted to be in entertainment, and then I finally found that industry, and I never looked back, for better or for worse. And I started as a network publicist at the History Channel and then moved on to Bravo. I spent about half my career as a television network publicist, which really taught me the ins and outs of working with talent, with the entertainment industry at large, upfronts, and I've developed a Rolodex that I still work with many of those reporters to this day. But right before 2019, so right before the pandemic, I kind of was feeling like television was not going to enable me to grow as a publicist in the way I wanted to. And I landed at Authentic Brands Group, which is a massive licensing company with a portfolio of some of the most iconic brands in the world. And I was tapped to head up their entertainment portfolio, which included brands like Elvis Presley's estate, Marilyn Monroe's estate, Muhammad Ali's estate, Shaquille O'Neal's business, Neil Lane, many, many. And then they had just expanded into media and had acquired Sports Illustrated from Meredith, R.I.P. Meredith. And so I kind of stepped away from that network publicity into a business of entertainment role that spanned lifestyle, fashion, events, and it expanded my Rolodex in a way that I'm so grateful for my time there, because my work with Sports Illustrated enabled me to connect with a lot of media and advertising and, the B2B side of things. And so transparently, Betches was always my dream job. I just when I was working at Bravo, I would bring my talent to Betches to do press tours. Before new media was even popular, I just knew that's where my peers were spending their time, on sites like Betches and listening to podcasts. And, I remember coming here with my talent in 2016, so 10 years ago. And I said, if I ever had the opportunity to work at Betches, that would be like the dream job. And then lo and behold, a role opened up in my, it was my next step in my career. And that was 3 years ago. And they knew me as, Michelle from Bravo, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm capable of, handling the reputation of a brand like Betches, which is so multifaceted and offers so much to so many different, you know, it's millennial and Gen Z women, but some people listen to the podcast, some people read the website, some people follow on social. And so having pairing that television background with the licensing and business of entertainment background, I think made, plus my passion and like love for the brand and truly being a diehard Betch for, since day one, I think put me in a unique position where I was really uniquely qualified to handle this business and take it to the next level, which I just celebrated 3 years here.
Yeah, congratulations. I always think it's so fun when, someone that's, managing the reputation of the brand and, works in PR for the brand is already a fan. I think that just, I don't know, it makes it that much better. And
It does.
Yeah, as well.
It makes the storytelling, it makes not easier to tell the story, but when I'm talking to reporters, like there's a real passion behind what I'm sharing. And that kind of authenticity can't be fabricated, really.
No. Well, that leads me to my next question. What caught my eye to bring you on was a LinkedIn post, which you shared, which you talked about spending 3 years building relationships to finally land an interview and a story with Variety about Betches. That is a long process. That is a long game. Can you do like a quick overview of how that happened and any tips you have for our audience when it comes to that media relations kind of long game?
Absolutely. So again, I've had placements in Variety before, and Betches has been in Variety before too, when we had an NFL announcement. But when I first joined, I was the first in-house comms person here. There was no structure. It was very choose your own adventure. And it was really up to me. And I had no systems. I had no tools. It was me and my wits and my Google Sheets and my Rolodex against the world. And I took advantage of that time to connect with reporters, friendlies, and new folks who I wanted to work with, because, and this is something that I really strongly believe, the best media relations is done when you don't need something from a reporter. That is kind of my foundation of media. Like, of course there are times where you have to, pitch a story. You might not know someone, and it's about, is this newsworthy? Is this something they might want to cover? But when you have the opportunity to meet with, and not just phone calls, like coffees, lunches, breakfasts, just reconnecting and having real conversations and serving as someone who says, okay, how can I make your job easier? Because I have a great brand here and I would love to work with you. What are you looking for? And that kind of has been how I've operated, and of course, like, things get really busy and, it can be tough to go meet in person, but media relations, I think, is a dish best served when you don't need something, because it makes it less transactional and it makes the storytelling, again, more appealing and more authentic. And I connected with a friendly of mine, Suzanne Alt at Variety. She does the events over there. And she, lo and behold, she was a fan of Betches. And she ended up being a super advocate for me. And that didn't necessarily translate into coverage immediately. So when there was opportunities to reach out to her and connect, I always took it. And in Cannes, I think last year, or maybe the year before, I made sure that she met the people who were on site at Betches as well. And, we're here in New York, and Variety is mostly out in LA too. So, and again, this is the first in-house comms role, I'm the first one to do this. I didn't exactly have a budget to go fly to LA and take meetings at the time. And you shouldn't need that.
Mhm.
It's great. Of course, it would be great to be able to have that in person, but having phone calls, like virtual coffees, anything that you can, anytime that a reporter gives you, I think if they're being very generous with their time, they don't have a lot of it. So making sure that you don't necessarily need something from them and that you keep in touch and reach out, say hello, engage on LinkedIn, keep it warm. It's very similar to sales, I think, because sales is I say that to say because sales is transactional, but you know sellers and clients have relationships and trust, and that is something that editors, journalists, bookers, and publicists also have. And trust takes a long time. It takes a really long time. And we have kind of been in this world where people expect immediate results. Our attention spans are so much shorter. And
Mhm.
so staying in touch with Suzanne enabled me to, a couple of years later, get a meeting with my editor, with my CEO and the editor in chief at Variety. Again, there was no story promised when that happened, but then that was the domino effect. They met, they connected, and I was able to get her on the Variety's, the editor in chief's Strictly Business podcast. And that was a double whammy because it was a podcast hit and an online piece too.
Mhm.
And that piece was really about Betches and the the brand itself, not a launch specific story.
Mhm.
So that also enabled, a really like meaty, deep conversation. So yeah, part of the MO for me this year has been shifting trying to shift the narrative of digital success or digital social media pioneer, digital success story, to entertainment platform.
Hmm.
Everything is television now, and you see brands like Gap getting into entertainment.
Mhm.
And with Betches, we really did lay the groundwork for the distributed, creator distributed model that exists right now that everyone is adopting. And so it's the 15-year anniversary, and the timing was really right. It was right for that big, juicy variety story. And it was one of those stories that actually really, I think, struck a nerve and it meant something. And you could have 100 press hits. It sometimes feels like empty calories.
Mm.
To me, one really solid press story that, and I started in consumer and now I kind of like love the B2B side of things,
Hmm.
but really that one story can be the domino effect for the next era of Betches, which is entertainment focus.
Yeah,
And
that
that's my
was
background. So it's perfect.
it works for you. It all connects. Yeah, that leads into my next question. The media environment is kind of wacky right now. There's a lot of mergers, there's
Mm-hmm.
layoffs, there's
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of stuff. It's been tough on journalists, tough on media in general. But Betches really seems to be holding it down. Especially when similar culturally driven media such as BuzzFeed is, I know they just sold for a fraction of what they used to be worth. They've lost that cultural pull. you know, what stories are you guys telling? I mean, you really revealed a little bit of that, but what stories do you need to tell in order to stay relevant, in this kind of environment?
I think that something that Betches did different than a lot of that, the early millennial, like digital boom, like the BuzzFeed era,
Mhm.
is Betches was bootstrapped. The three co founders built it slowly and sustainably. And they always put the brand first. They didn't take outside investors. They were really, really, really methodical. And the brand was the bread, that was the gold standard. So they poured everything into the brand. They built community around the brand. And, you know, they didn't try and do Gen Z.
Yes.
They hired Gen Z creators. They launched a Gen Z, we launched a Gen Z vertical. And, you know, Gen Z women, they were reading, this pains me to say because I was a senior in college when Betches came out, but they are digitally native in a way that's different than millennials. They were probably reading Betches in middle school and high school and have been following. And it's like crazy to think about. But then there are nuances to the way Gen Z consume content and the way, I mean, the whole millennial and Gen Z divide is, of course, something that everyone loves to talk about. And a lot of, I think Gen Z knows when they're being marketed to. They can sniff out, then, you know, some of these kids are like iPad babies, you know, they can sniff out an advertisement online. They have their own language. And so instead of millennials trying to learn that language, they brought on Gen Z creators to refine that language as part of the Betches ecosystem. And I think that really helped because we also weren't holding on to an internet that didn't exist anymore. The co-founders also were not afraid to try new platforms. They were one of the first to start a podcast network. And I remember one of them was telling me how, or I think they had met with like a legacy media executive saying that, you know, podcasting is never going to be a thing. And it's like, they really listened. They went on instinct and gut. And that really proved to be successful because we're still standing here, right? And they weren't afraid to pivot, and they never relied on one platform. I say we never relied on one platform to keep it all together. So there's, yes, a website. There is, yes, an Instagram. There's, yes, Twitter, now Threads, and YouTube and TikTok. But all of them have the through line of the Betches language, and the brand is the heartbeat. So it's not platform dependent. And I think that's the other thing. So it was the Gen Z, you know, making it work, making Betches, not trying to turn Betches into a Gen Z brand, having a Gen Z spinoff and having Gen Z creators making the content for that, and being like platform agnostic essentially, to the point where if Instagram went, I remember, I'll never forget, there was a day Instagram went down in 2019, and it was like the first time it went down for more than like an hour, and everyone was hanging out on Twitter. And it's like, okay, well, you can't. And I think we're seeing that now still today with, you know, there was the TikTok, the looming threat of a TikTok ban, and a lot of creators migrating over to Substack. We've also migrated over to Substack. So we're not afraid to change. We're not afraid to pivot. But one thing stays the same, and that is the voice, because the brand is built on a very, very specific voice and point of view. And whether it's sports or style or Bravo, it still has the Betches flair. And you always know when something was created by Betches.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. Audiences are fragmented now and they're on different platforms, but as long as your voice stays intact, you know, you can talk to millennials, you can talk to Gen Z, you could talk to older ladies if you wanted to, you know, it's all
the my mom sends me memes from Betches now. You know what I mean? I will also add one other thing is we were acquired in 2023 by Lad Bible Group. And it was not an acquisition out of necessity, but it was an opportunity to accelerate the growth in a way that has powered us to, now we have Betches UK. We're now a global brand. So I think the founders had a lot of suitors over the years, but then there was an opportunity with the right parent company, and they took it. And since then we have really, that has been a really important factor in us, pivoting into a more entertainment focused brand, and a global one at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. You always hear about acquisitions and things like that. You have to make sure it's the right fit and that they have the right intentions in mind. So that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
We're already at question 5.
Yeah.
So I always try to ask a fun one for the last one. Graduation season is here.
Yeah.
So if you think back to that, college senior, what would you tell your younger self fresh out of college?
Your dreams are going to come true. You're going to work with some of the biggest names in the world, and you're going to be in love with your career. But I would also tell her that, there's no such thing as a dream job. And that's something to keep in mind, because you can't have a job. Your job can't be the only thing that makes you happy. It really was, something, we grew up watching 13 Going on 30, Devil Wears Prada, this kind of mirage of a glossy, world of media. And, you're going to get to experience that, but things change, and work cannot be the only thing that makes you happy. It can be a really amazing part of your life, and it will fulfill you in the ways that you want, but don't just focus on work.
What are some, just to follow up and then we'll head out, what are some of the things outside of work that fulfill you?
I've always been so passionate about entertainment, and then I made it my job, and then your passion becomes your job. So working at Bravo was also a dream job, but now I love being a fan. It's okay to just be a fan of art and be a consumer of art. And you don't have to compare yourself to other people who have maybe something potentially what looks cooler on Instagram. Your life, you did it, you made it. But also don't forget to watch a movie that you love or start a series. It doesn't always have to be work focused.
So next time we're at BravoCon, we'll take a look, see if we find you.
Yeah.
You never know.
I have not been to BravoCon, but my old team is they're absolutely incredible, and I admire them immensely.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us today and recording with us. And we wish you and Betches the best.
Thank you so much.